Now, what do I call these? The Joyce girls, is that it? Or
No.
the Kavanagh girls?
Yeah.
The Paula girls?
The Kavanagh Sisters.
The Kavanagh Sisters. Yeah. All right. Well, it's June Kavanagh, Joyce Kavanagh, and Paula Kavanagh, and they've written their book, which is Click, Click, and that was the sound that basically summoned you to action.
It was clicking fingers. That's how my father called us, you know.
That was a signal.
Yeah.
It was. It was about the horrific upbringing you had in relation to your father. Tell us, where'd you grow up? Where was it?
Ballyfermot.
Yeah.
Farney Road, Ballyfermot.
Right.
Great place.
Indeed. I used to work in Rowntree Macintosh, by the way, years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Down the road. So we used
Probably
to go up a lot.
dropped into our shop, did you?
No, whereabouts was your shop?
The
At
Farney
the
Road.
canal, just before everyone went to the canal
Over
for
that
the
humpback
summer.
bridge.
Right.
Semper
Remember the
Tire
Semper Tire
Factory was
Factory
just over the bridge.
You come over the bridge and we were just on the left-hand side.
And the business was?
Initially
we had a shop, a grocery shop, and then we went on to make teddy bears. We had a chip shop.
The soft toys, as
Yes,
they're called, yeah.
and we were at the soft toys for years.
We were at the groceries for years as well. We tried everything.
And when you were kids, what was life like at home?
Oh, super.
A barrel of laughs.
Well, I mean, it's hard to tell. We were used to it, right? Our life was full of abuse, but you'd have never told by looking at any of us
that it was happening.
No.
When did it all start? Around what age?
Very, very young. We
Around
reckoned
4.
3 or 4, yeah. 3 or 4, he would have started to groom you. By the time you made your communion, you would have had full-blown sex. Communion day was a special day for Dad. He loved the white, really turned him on. He was a bit sick.
Oh, God.
And
sad.
what was your sense of, did you know that it was wrong, or did you think it was unusual, or, at that age,
Yeah, no, instinctively it's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, there was tears and crying all the time. Of course you knew it was wrong, but you were powerless, you know.
And it was also normal for us. Like, we did grow up from a very young age. We knew no different. So it was kind of normal. We also knew not to talk about it. But I think in the days, the culture at the time would have never spoken about anything going on in the house, and that wouldn't have necessarily anything to do with abuse. Everybody was like that. That was the culture and the society we grew up in. You know, keep everything indoors. Nobody spoke about anything that happened in their house.
And what threats were you given if you did decide to do it?
Leave.
My mother was English, say, and my dad always told us that she would leave if she ever found out.
And the prospects of being left alone with him was enough of a scare, like.
Right, and was there any physical violence?
With the boys mostly, and with the older boys, by the time it was nearly like just 10 in the family, it was nearly like 2 families. By the time we came along, I think he was exhausted. And anyway, a lot of the time his threats were enough. You know, the hitting didn't come as often, but they didn't need to. Like, his threats would be enough.
How frequent was this abuse?
Daily.
Very frequent.
Daily.
Daily?
Yeah.
Yeah, every day or every second day. But he abused everybody, you know. It wasn't you got a break for a while. None of us have memories of having any long period of time without abusing it.
Yeah, and the atmosphere in the house. I mean,
Was
going to
dreadful.
school and coming home, would you take longer to go home and all that sort of
School
stuff?
was actually... we wrote about this in the book, school for most of us was actually worse than being in the house, because you knew what was happening in the house.
You knew
School
what was
was
expected.
completely new. You had to try and talk to people, you had to remember stuff. That was harder than being at home.
And there was always that sense that we felt safe at home. I know that's ridiculous now, but there was because we knew the ground, we knew exactly what to expect. There was a sense of safety, and because Dad was also a bully, we always felt he'd protect us. I mean, Jesus, where did that come from?
But not only that,
We
every
did.
ounce of your energy went into survival. So you kind of closed your vision right in, and it was only about you and about surviving and getting through a day. So you went into school and there were these external expectations placed on you that just threw you. You couldn't cope, and we mistook that for stupidity. And of course we heard this back at home as well from my father telling us we were constantly thick. We couldn't even get up in the morning without him. And then we went into school, and the pressure of being expected to learn something that you couldn't learn. And you just convinced yourself, yeah, he's right, I'm absolutely stupid.
And also the culture at the time was, especially for women, education wasn't valued in our house at all.
Yeah.
It was more about you knew you were going to leave and work, so why would you be?
You were there up to 13, 14 or
Yeah,
whatever it was.
so
and
why
then
would
were
you
out.
care?
12.
Yeah.
We left it very early. It would have been around 12 we left school. But then, the expectation was you would only get married and have kids. There's no
Yeah,
need for an
yeah.
education.
And what was the relationship between you all?
We didn't
Especially
have one.
you three.
We didn't have one.
Well, I had one
did.
with June. I had one with June.
Only as we got a bit older, people looked at us and thought we were a very close family. And I don't know where they got that perception from. Maybe the amount of us, But we weren't really close. There was a kinship, of course, because we were all in this same situation. We did have a connection on that level.
Did you discuss it at all?
No, not young. And even when we got older, only with drink and only superficially. We'd mention it, we'd cry, and that would be it. We'd acknowledge it and then move on. It was only through the process of writing the book that we actually discussed it.
Right.
That was through writing. We'd go away and write a piece, then come together and we'd all
Share.
read it, share it and cry and laugh and slag. But that's how we got our deep understanding of what happened to each other and ourselves.
And the desire to get out of the situation, did that sort of start coming into your head as the older you got? Or what?
Well, I think the first desire would have been the time we watched the Late Late Show. Florence Nightingale or something was on, and she was talking about her abuse, and she visited the home she'd been abused in and Grave, and that was the first indication that there was help out there. And I rang the Rape Crisis Centre and put all our names on the waiting list. But that was me done. Like, I made that call, and then we relaxed, and nothing happened for a year. And it was only when this came out we got back onto them.
And
So, yeah, we
in
did.
fairness, when Joyce made the call, she didn't inform some of us that she'd made that call.
I'm very good
Famous
like
for
that. Yeah, I'm very good like that. We're all in it together.
What was your father's relationship with other people? And
He appeared very gregarious. He was very
did you have to go
tactile.
down the pub for a pint?
No, he
to-
wasn't a drinker. He didn't
Well.
drink and he didn't smoke. He
But
was a family man, believe it or not. That was what people would
Sport?
have... No. Well, he watched football and effing blind at the screen, but no, he wasn't anyway sporty. He was,
He
a
was a
little round.
telly addict, though.
Yeah, he was
tell you
lazy sad. Like, total control freak. He controlled when and where everybody was at
In the
all
house.
times. What you were doing, how you were doing it. And he ordered everybody around for a cup of tea, switched the television channel, wash me feet. It was all click, click for everything. And it was just complete control.
And
But,
relationship with your mother?
Well, she was always working, very
Yeah,
rarely do we ever
she wasn't
recall
there
even seeing them.
emotionally anyway. Like, she was completely screwed up before we came along. She wasn't there emotionally. Like, I had a good relationship with her once when I had to work in the shop with her, and I got to know her on a whole different level. And she was so grateful for everything you did, so it was amazing to be around her. But you'd never get that. She didn't give us attention because when she did, Dad got jealous and we paid for it. So she learned very early on to pull back.
So she was aware of the situation. Was she
No.
equally afraid of...
No, she wasn't aware of the situation. She
Was
would have known.
aware, aware of the controlling, but not aware
the
of the
control.
abuse?
Oh, yeah.
She was.
When
Like,
he was
we-
a
They controlled her.
He was a temper tantrum man. He'd come in and pull all the presses out and throw stuff around the room, or if he didn't like his dinner, he'd throw it on the floor.
And she knew the shop was
That
our
was what he was
livelihood.
like.
And if she left it to him, we'd have no business because he was so rude to the customers. Some of the stories now, we find them absolutely hysterical.
Go on, tell us a few.
Well, some child came in and was looking for a £1/4 of corned beef, and he couldn't find any greaseproof paper to put it on. We had a slicing machine. And he just told the guy to hold his hand out. He slapped a quarter of corned beef on his hand and said, off you go. And if somebody else, a child came in and wanted sweets out of a jar that required my father raising his arm, like, to get up to the top of a shelf, he'd tell him to fuck off. And he'd go to the next child and he'd say, right, next.
if you hesitate, though, you'd be saying, give us this and get off. He said, come back when you know what you fucking want, and throw him out the shop. So,
How was the business then?
My mother
My
pushed
mother.
him out, and he knew what he was doing. It was very deliberate. So she took over. She worked every hour that God gave, because she knew if he was there, we'd have no business. And he knew exactly what he was doing.
And what were the occasions of abuse? I mean, I mentioned First Communion and all that, but how did he organise it with your mother not being there? And
well, my
yous
mother was
being
in the
there?
shop. In the shop, which was right beside the house. It's an extension. Used to be a garage. But to go to the toilet, you had to ring the bell so someone could relieve you, otherwise you'd be robbed blind. So there's no way she could ever sneak in and catch anything going on.
So he knew that she was preoccupied out there,
Absolutely.
couldn't
Plus
move.
the house was, my father built the house with loads of,
Annexes.
loads of little rooms off it. So it's quite, if you don't know the house and you come in, you can actually get lost coming in thinking it's very hard to find your way around it because of the way he has structured it. Very badly now, but that's the way he's done it. So that's how he got away with it, and also because there was a culture in our house that everybody knew you made noise no matter where you went in the house. Nobody ever said it to you, but everybody knew it. So you never gently walked upstairs, you banged your way upstairs, because it was just everybody knew, make noise, so that would give time. And normally the problem with abuse is the victims are the ones who take on the responsibility. So we would have been sitting there thinking we were going to get caught doing something when it had nothing to do with us. And that was, again, that's just another way abuse works.
Yeah. And how did it all end?
Differently for each of us. Joyce, do you want
Yeah,
to?
I had my periods when I was 17. And I was playing around the playground on a slide. And they slagged me desperately for this. But I came home and told my mother, and she threw me in the bathroom with Santritel. But after that, my dad just stopped abusing me. I didn't realise then I could have become pregnant. He obviously knew that. I never made that connection, but he just stopped abusing me.
17 is very late. Isn't
I
it?
know.
We're all very late developers.
Yeah, very late.
So it stopped. So for yourselves?
For me, I said no. It was Joyce had gone into town one day and wouldn't take me, and I was devastated. So I wanted to get her into trouble for not taking me. I told my father, who would do nothing. So that was it. I was at the end of my rope, ran upstairs sobbing, and he came up behind me and clicked his fingers, and I couldn't believe it now. And it was just pure timing, the mood I was in. I was actually very fiery temper, but I never knew I had any power in relation to him. And I just said no and waited for it to be battered, basically. And it never happened. And he went back downstairs again when I realised that I actually had said no and got away with it. I couldn't believe it. Because then you start beating yourself up going, if I could say no, why didn't I say it sooner? Maybe this is something about me.
But you realised the power of that must
and
be amazing.
he approached me about a couple of weeks later asking me, he said, you know, we all have vices, and I know you smoke. I didn't know what a vice was, I mean, really, you know. And he said, well, what you do, you know you smoke. He said, that's a vice, and what I do is a vice. Now, he said, if you allow me my vice, I'll allow you yours. And I said, absolutely not. Give up smoking, fuck that.
And Paula, how did it end for you?
And again, I said no, and it is that dilemma when you say no of why didn't I do it sooner? Like, I think I was 16 or 17 when I said no. But I know with my father, God, the bribery and all went on for at least another 3-4 years after I had said no. Anytime I was going away, when I was going to America, that he'd say, you know, I know you need money for this, I can give you money if you want to go away, but you know what you have to do in return. But after saying no, there was absolutely no way back from that. But it took me, that kind of threw me into an awful lot of stuff, in the fact that I just couldn't believe I didn't say no sooner.
That's nearly worse than the abuse. Because then
you
the
take the
abuse
blame.
starts from yourself,
You
you know.
start internalising everything. And we know, like, really, our background is horrendous. And we're very well aware of that. And I know we're laughing and joking. That's a coping mechanism for us.
Yeah.
But really, the message we want to get across with the book is there's life after abuse.
Yeah, and I want to come to that because it was towards the late 80s, early 90s, wasn't it, that there was some sort of resolution.
Yeah.
How did that go untrained then?